Perez opens up on his mental health issues. Sergio Perez's struggles this season can be attributed to many things, most notably his driving skills, but that's far from the only reason. All of this pressure throughout the season has reflected heavily on the Mexican driver's mental health, to the point where he even had to seek professional help, which only goes to show how hard it is to be an F1 driver, as further confirmed by his father, who fired shots at Red Bull, saying they favor Verstappen. Could Perez end up really retiring, or at the very least moving on from the spotlight, which is Red Bull, in order to preserve his well-being? Throughout 2023, Perez has struggled with maintaining consistent performance, facing the formidable challenge of his teammate Max Verstappen, who has clinched victory in all but 3 races this season. Despite a promising start, where he beat Verstappen in 2 out of the initial 4 races, this marks Perez's least impressive year in his 3rd term alongside the Dutch driver at Red Bull. It appears that a combination of factors has contributed to Perez's recent struggles, which include pressure, a potential lack of pace, and inconsistency in performance. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner specifically highlighted the pressure of a potential title fight as a significant factor, and after the Spanish Grand Prix, where Perez faced difficulties in qualifying and didn't progress to Q3, Horner attributed his challenges to the weight of expectation put on a driver who simply doesn't have the skill capacity of Max Verstappen. After the summer break, Perez, while pulling out some decent results like Monza and Zandvoort, didn't quite showcase his skill in Japan, where he was by far the most entertaining driver on the grid, and I'm not mentioning that we had a Mercedes battle between Russell and Hamilton. Yes, part of that entertainment was FIA's fault for making him unretire the car and serve the 5-second penalty, but the 2 front wing changes in the first part of the race, only to retire right after, brought a smile to everyone's faces and added fuel to the fire about his spot on the team. All of this is a minor concern for Red Bull this season. The team has won every race. Perez still has 2 wins of his own, and both championships are effectively locked up already. In 2024, the team expects a more competitive fight and expects that its hopes of winning a constructors' title will once again require a competitive second driver. There are still talks about Lando Norris potentially replacing Perez, but that would happen after the 2024 season rather than this postseason. Perez's spot in Red Bull is safe for now, especially after it was confirmed that Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda will race in AlphaTauri in 2024. However, this leaves one driver without a seat, which should not be ignored. Perez finally opened up on his struggles recently in an interview for the Dutch publication Der Limburger, talking about how he went as far as hiring a mental coach to help him on and off the track. Perez talked about how his season basically turned on its head after the Miami Grand Prix, where he had a different car that didn't suit him. This, in my opinion, was expected, because many people speculated that it was the Monaco crash that caused him to lose confidence, but it was getting beaten from pole in Miami by his own teammate that completely demoralized him and led him to push too much in Monaco. Not to mention that a win in Miami would even put Perez in the championship lead, which would be an entirely different reality, and who knows what might have happened later on in the season. I struggled a lot in the summer. In the beginning, I was competing for the world title, but from May onwards that changed. I was driving without confidence. At one point, I just didn't come out of Q2. That was very tough, because you drive with a top team, the pressure to perform increases quickly, but I didn't give up and kept working hard with the engineers to sort things out. My self-confidence came back when I realized that I had won races under my own steam earlier this year. I dare say I am 100% again now, and I also have the conviction again that I can have a shot at the world title next year. Perez admitted that his poor on-track performances were impacting his family life, and that the coach helped him improve his mood where he was at home with his kids, and also became more positive and cheerful in general. When you're having such a hard time with your work, it is difficult to be cheerful at home with your wife and children, he added. So I hired a mental coach because my family deserves to have that cheerful father at home. Together with my coach, I worked on becoming the best version of myself, not only at home, but also as a driver. As a result, I found positivity again. I am now 33 years old, but I am still learning every day. On the track, but certainly also off it. Partly because of this, I will never get tired of Formula One. It's really amazing what this sport still gives me. I think it's very good for him to open up about his struggles and get the help he needs, but while he says he's back at 100%, I kind of wonder if that might really be the case after watching his performances in Singapore and Japan. However, as he also mentions, there's a shitload of pressure in F1, so I can imagine it must be difficult to get back in your groove when things aren't going too well. We've seen it so many times because there is a useful amount of pressure that drives performance, and then there is extreme pressure that ruins confidence as it compounds with initial small failures that grow and grow further on. We saw it with Albon and Gasly in Red Bull, Grosjean and Schumacher in Haas, and Ricciardo in McLaren. That mentality, which is forced where you have to perform or you're gone, only works for people who carry belief in themselves no matter what. Like, for example, the types of Verstappen and Hamilton, where almost no knockback is going to affect their mental preparedness. But the majority of drivers sink when that pressure builds and they start getting desperate for performance. As expected, though, there are people who defend Perez for his on-track performances, like his father, who says the car is better suited for Max Verstappen, hence the bad results his son is showing. Everything is built around Max. Perez, has to respect that, Perez Sr. told Mexican Esto. The car is tuned for Max, who likes to have a lot of grip at the front of the car. Checo prefers grip at the back, but so he has to drive a car that is tailor-made for Max. And Horner and Red Bull have confirmed many times that this is not the case, saying that it's Verstappen who can simply handle the car better, which might be the case for real. Hopefully Perez can pull it together for the remainder of the year, because if he doesn't, he is likely out at Red Bull. But there's no shame about what he accomplished in his career, especially once at Red Bull against a much superior Verstappen. However, I have to admit, I would love to see what Lawson, for example, could do with the second seat at RBR, because if he drives better than Perez and proves Perez's father wrong, then Perez's reputation would take a huge hit. Lawson's brief tenure in Formula One has demonstrated his skill and affirmed his place in the sport, as he has navigated the challenges of his debut with very high professionalism. Regarding the selection of Tsunoda and Ricciardo, Tsunoda's connection with Honda and Ricciardo's marketable persona align with Red Bull's considerations, and these choices reflect the understanding that F1 entry isn't solely determined by talent. By retaining Lawson as a reserve driver, Red Bull keeps the door open for him in case of a setback with one of their current drivers, and with Perez potentially facing scrutiny after his incident in Suzuka, Lawson might find an opportunity in 2024 if he remains patient, because his value to Red Bull is evident. However, if Lawson's patience wears thin and he swiftly secures a spot with another team, Aston Martin must swiftly formulate their medium to potentially short-term plans. To be honest, Red Bull's approach, while boring, really aligns well with the current driver market, as it's pragmatic in recognizing that there's no readily apparent alternative driver who, in theory, matches the caliber Perez demonstrated when chosen over Albon. Back when Perez secured his spot, he was in the middle of an impressive campaign with Racing Point's RP20, having consistently performed well in prior seasons. Uncontracted and fighting for his career, he essentially left Red Bull with no choice but to take notice, and although his consistency has been a point of contention since, he has also shown flashes of brilliance, and at this time, no one, both within and outside the Red Bull family, is making a convincing case in the way Perez did 3 years ago. Given this, why disrupt the current team dynamic from Red Bull's perspective? While Perez may not be closely contending with Verstappen, the overall stability is evident, and if Red Bull's dominance carries through to 2024, which there's reason to believe given this year's advantage and the time it affords, the gap between their drivers, no matter how substantial, doesn't seem to overly concern the team at the moment. Hence, the sensible move is to observe Perez's performance for another year, and similarly assess what Ricciardo can achieve with a proper pre-season of preparation. If neither pans out, then next summer would be the opportune time to make a more assertive move in the driver market. At the end of the day, from Red Bull's perspective, the only factor threatening Perez's seat for next season is Perez himself, if he decides to retire. Do you think Perez's mental health really took a toll on him? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching Racing Zone, and we will see you in the next video.